All right, Coach David Gentry, I finally got you here in your office to sit down and just to talk about David Gentry, talk about your career, incredible career that I'll kind of run over the highlights. Began as a player and a four-sport star at Edneyville. It took you from there to Elon University, where you was a graduate of the class of 70. Not only did you play football, but you began your coaching career under the mentorship of Coach Red Wilson, so we'll get to that. And then you went back home to Edneyville High School, 1974 to 83, and then ended up here in Murphy. Had a stop in Virginia in between. I'm sure we'll learn about that. Your honors include inducted into the North Carolina High School Athletic Association Hall of Fame, the National High School Athletic Coaches Hall of Fame, and here this past week, the North Carolina Sports Hall of Fame, which is incredible. So, Coach, thanks for having me up here all the way to Murphy, and I'm excited to learn some stories, hopefully some things I did not know, and just kind of learn about your illustrious career.
Well, I appreciate you coming up. You had a long drive. I'm really impressed that you'd come this far up here. And Chris, we really welcome you to West North Carolina and to Murphy High School.
Thank you. And I've been to two of your games here in the stadium, and it's neat to come back to actually sit in your coach's office. And I think the cool part of this interview, I've done a couple of these already, and I did them at a coach's house and actually one at my house. But you're sitting at the desk that was your desk during your career here at Murphy. I think that is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I was here for 38 years, so I'm kind of used to this room and this desk here.
I guess you've got a lot of hours in this office, a lot of game planning, probably a lot of conversations with coaches and players, and you've done a lot of business in here.
A lot of business. This is where we had all our coaches' meetings, did all of our planning, and watched a lot of film also in here. Wow. So we kind of did everything in here, and so this is it. I
bet so. Well, hey, to tell this story right, and I'm honored to be here amongst a real legend of the state. But let's start from the beginning. What was your childhood like growing up in Henderson County?
Well, in Henderson County, I didn't go to Hendersonville. I went to a small mountain school called Edneyville. Mm-hmm. I lived right outside of Hendersonville, so we were in the county. And so my father was a minister of a rather large church, and my mother, of course, helped him in that church, and that's what they did. And so that's where I was raised at. I was raised as a preacher's boy, so I'm a preacher boy. And of course, my father wasn't into sports, but thankfully, my oldest brother, Joel, was 4 years older than me. He was really into sports, and so he's the one that really got me into sports. We played out, you talk about the Field of Dreams. We had the Field of Dreams right beside our house with the cornfields and everything that's in the movie. But we had to line up for the home run, and we that's where we played. I didn't play any organized ball. Coming up, I played a half a year of Little League and a half a year of what they call Pony League. And I was kind of probably in between the communities there. But our community, what we played at was, we played out in our backyard. And my brother was 4 years older, so all of his friends would come over, and I would play with almost all older kids all the time. So I think that made me better. As when you're playing with people that are older, you got a little better skill than you are, and so that's the way we grew up. We had a packing house over at the trucking, Clay Hyder's Trucking, that was open air packing house, and had basketball goal in it. Wow. Because their boys were active in sports. So it didn't make any difference what the weather was. We could stand probably the cold. We'd go over there and shoot basketball. In football season, we had Blue Ridge School for the boys, which was probably about 400 yards from us. They had flat fields, football fields, so we go over and play football. So we were kind of homegrown sports growing up. I owe it all to my brother. As far as the love of sports, we didn't have any TV in the house until I was in 8th grade. So we were radio people.
I was going to be my next question. So you obviously there was no cable TV, there was no TV of any kind, like I said, until the 8th grade. So I imagine you listened to some games, probably with your brothers, your family, huddling around a transistor radio, and or maybe waiting for the paper to come in and reading the box score or something like that.
That's what we lived off of. But the radio was our main live broadcast.
Sure. Who was your favorite athletes?
Well, because of we listened to radio, we'd listen to Mutual on baseball. We'd use Mutual Game of the Week in baseball. So obviously in the 50s, who you think I am was going to be one of mine was Mickey Mantle. You know, Yogi Berra, the Yankees. They were the best. You know, and of course, as you're growing up, people like the best people. So Mickey Mantle there was going up, and we listened to all the 56, 57 UNC basketball. Almost every game. Listen to that final game when they played Kansas and beat Wilt Chamberlain in 3 overtimes.
Wow.
So radio, we listened to the Kentucky Derby, Indianapolis 500, the Daytona 500. Anything that was big on radio, we listened to. And at nighttime, Chris, we would listen to the Pittsburgh Pirates because we could get Pittsburgh.
Wow.
And so I became a Pittsburgh fan in the early 60s. People like Bill Mazeroski, you know. Elroy Face was a pitcher, and he was Smokey Burgess, which is a Hall of Famer from North Carolina. He was a pinch hitter, came out of North Carolina, and he was there. So radio was our kind of a go-to thing, like it is on TV today. I also would pick up Baton Rouge, LSU and Baton Rouge, so I listened to LSU, Paul Dietzel, and when he was coached at LSU, Billy Cannon was the big back then, and Billy Cannon went on into AFL and did very well. But that's kind of how we grew up. So we grew up in a real different area. But Chris, you know what? I don't think it'd be better. I wouldn't want to go back and put a phone in my hand. I wouldn't want to go back and put a TV in front of me when I was 5 years old, because or 6 years old, or a phone. I might not have got outside.
Sure.
I might not have been out there. I might have, you know, and that's just the same way it is. But I was thankful I was born when I was and raised like I was.
You know, speaking of that, I feel like I'm kind of an old soul myself. You know, I've always kind of gravitated towards the old stuff, whether it's old cars, you know, kind of just Americana, kind of that picture of Norman Rockwell that you've seen of things through the 50s and 60s. What was growing up in Edneyville like, you know, and maybe your school experience, just the town itself, like the community? What was it like away from the sports field?
Well, you know, we were 10 miles from Edneyville. So we were right outside of Hendersonville, and I'm a 64 man. When you tell me what US 64, that's where I've lived on the most of my life. I'm 79 years old, and I probably lived within 5 miles of 64 in 75 years.
Wow.
So 64 goes through Hendersonville. 64 goes through, I lived right outside of it. 64 goes through Edneyville. 64 is right outside here. It's a mile down the road. I live out on 64 as you turn out here now, which is my residence here. So I'm a 64 man, I guess. But, you know, when we were raised there, going to school at Edneyville, they didn't have any middle school sports at that time. And so our sports was outside at home in the community, except those 2.5 years I've played baseball in Little League in Babe Ruth. And one thing I did, my football coach, as an 8th grader, he said, he had 3 of our players, he said, I'll let you come out and you can practice with us. And it was the varsity. They didn't have JV, so it's 9 through 12. So I got to practice with the varsity as an 8th grader. I really learned a lot because they were pretty good. And they didn't mind hitting you. And so you learn to take a hit and learn how not to get hit. Mm-hmm. And so that year, even though I loved it, I loved anything about sports. I'd play anything that you want to play. But I just loved football, basketball, baseball, and ran track. So when I got to high school, You asked me how big a place Edneyville was. I used to sit up there in Edneyville up there, and I looked down there on 64. They'd have a sign down there, and that sign was one pole. It had Edneyville on this side and Edneyville on this side. So I thought Edneyville was about that wide. That's about all was there. And I may have had a couple of stores on there, but that's what I always used to kid them about. But yeah, I had a great time.
I'm starting to see a trend here. Playing with older brothers, older guys as a child playing sports.
Yeah.
Then an 8th grader practicing with varsity guys. I think that's kind of maybe why you turned out so tough, because I've always looked at you and thought of you as just a hard-nosed kind of guy, and I'm starting to kind of understand why.
Yeah. Well, when you pitched and all that stuff, it's going to make you tough. You're going to have to get tough or get out. And so again, that's what really helped me, I think, become a better player and be able to learn how to work harder to get better.
Tell me about some of your playing days in high school and how you transitioned and how you decided to go to Elon.
Well, in high school, I played all the sports, and then played football, basketball, baseball, and ran track, all conference in all of them, all Western in football. Track qualifier, state qualifier in track, and at that time track was all classification, it was 1 through 4, and so you had to qualify with everybody. Excuse me, but so if you'd asked me when I was in high school, what's your favorite sport? You know what I would have told you?
The one year in season.
The 1 year in season.
Yeah.
And so that's the way that a lot of really good athletes, that's the reason why they're good in a lot of different things. They don't have I was glad I wasn't raised today when they had to tell me, now you got to go pick a sport, play AAU basketball or baseball and all in the fall. We didn't do that, and I'm glad we didn't. But in football, we didn't even take film in our high school. Small 1A school in the mountains, and in high school I had 4 different head coaches in 4 years.
Wow.
So the last year was a good one, Bill Whitmire and Tom Pryor, and but they didn't film. Other schools filmed, but we didn't. And so I had to go work out. And so I started at Presbyterian and worked my way to Elon. My dad would take me at Presbyterian 1 week, would take me to LR the next, and then 2 weeks, I'd go to Guilford the next week and go to Elon the next. And that was my 4 workouts. So pretty good football player, but nobody really had much film on me. So, they had to go by what you did on the workout.
Sure.
And so as we started in the spring, as working out, I wasn't too fast as far as my fit. They did 50 times, but then when I started working out in track, got my time down. By the time I got to Guilford to Elon, the time was pretty good at that time, and so I think that's what really got me the scholarship was the time that I had in the 50s, and so both of those offered me a scholarship, Guilford and Elon. And Elon offered me more, so what'd you do? You took the most, and I'm glad I did, because Elon was a good place for me.
You mentioned that you had 4 different head coaches through high school. Which coach or coaches would you say had the most impact on a young David Gentry that of course made you a better player, but did any of them ever kind of light a fuse in you that made you think that you'd want to go into coaching later after college? Well,
I had Bill Whitmire and Tom Pryor were my football coach, and they certainly did. Harris Pryor was my basketball and baseball coach. He also was a head football coach there, but when we didn't have one, he kind of subs in there. But he was a really great athlete at Western. He played on the all-conference Western team. He was all-league. He was also a baseball pitcher at Western. So I learned a lot from him. And those coaches in high school really made an impression on me as far as how their work ethic was to me and what they did and how they coached me as far as what I wanted to coach.
You played at Elon for Coach Red Wilson. He had a great career in his own right. What was he like to be around?
Well, I didn't play at Elon. I didn't play under Red.
Oh, you didn't. You coached under Red.
I coached under Red. I got at Elon when I was a freshman under George Tucker.
Okay.
And fortunately, I got to start. Led the team in touchdowns. We won the league. We went 8-1-1 that year. The only loss that we had was a really bitter loss, 21-20 at Western. And since I was from Western North Carolina, that really hurt. But that was a real close ball game. But in that ball game, we were ahead, real rolling easy, and we were ahead. We had scored 5 times, had 2 called back, and I had scored twice and had 1 call back, and all of a sudden, with 9 minutes left, the bottom fell out, and they started passing. We couldn't stop, and we got beat 21-20. But so that was the only loss that year at Elon. But I did come to Appalachian and beat Appalachian earlier. I scored 3 touchdowns to help beat them. So from the mountains, I was 1-1. I had 1-1, lost 1 coming from the mountains. And I held some record season. Had some school records there, which was very fortunate in kickoff returns, punt returns, and I might have still have the longest pass from the line of scrimmage. But I played 3 years there at Elon. Stayed out a year, got married, had a young baby. I worked at Greensboro Daily News. Then I came back and started working with Red Wilson.
Okay.
Red then got the job after there, and I scouted for Red the year I was out. And then when I came back to finish up my degree, I was undergraduate assistant. He coached the freshman team, which is the scout team, and we had a couple of freshman games. And learning from him and his staff, had a great staff. Was tremendous, and I knew at that time when I started scouting for Red and coaching for him, that was my calling. I had no second thoughts of where I wanted to go, what position I wanted. I knew I wanted to be a football coach. Wow. And so that was really the thing that put me across the top as far as loving the game. A lot of people love the game. A lot of people love to play the game. A lot of people like to watch the game. But not many people like to love to coach the game.
Sure.
And that was my love. And then the coach would be coaching, because it was just in my blood. That was what I think God led me to do.
Sure.
And it just worked out real good.
What was your first coaching job after you left Elon? Well,
you talked about some questions you maybe want to ask, and you asked some of the best ones that a lot of interviews that I've had. I went to Chatham, Virginia. I came out of Elon and as assistant coach at Moorhead High School. I was the offensive back coach.
Moorhead is in Eden?
In Eden.
In Rockingham County?
In Rockingham County, yes. And I didn't like the things that going on, I mean, as far as the head coach was, and me being a loyal coach. I went about halfway through the season, and I went to the principal, and I said, listen, I said, I just don't like it. I don't like it here. I said, I want to do more than what I'm doing. I don't feel like I'm getting out of what of myself that I can get out of at this position. So I'm gonna resign as a teacher and a football coach after the end of this year, because I had to coach track too. You never did go in at that time and just be one coach.
Right.
And so I thought about that for a while after doing that, and I said, well, that wasn't a very smart idea. I had a family with two girls. And I just went in and resigned. I don't have a job. I said, that's not very good. So I went looking for a job and just finally went up to Chatham, Virginia, which is right across Danville. You know Danville?
Yes.
It's the county seat of Pennsylvania County. Danville is the town, big town, but Chatham's a little town in the middle. It's the county seat. So I went up to Chatham, and fortunately, when I talked to the principal, guess where he's from? Elon.
How about that?
So it's a part of this life is who you meet, who knows you, and what connections you have. And some people never get the right connection, and they might be just as good as anybody else. But I think some of the connections that I got helped make my life successful. So I went there, and Chatham was not a football school. They were 3-27 when I went in. No, they were 1-19 when I went in. Murphy was 3-27. They were 1-19, and the year before they were 0-10. So it was not a place where you know you're going to go into and say, okay, I'm going to be 10-0. You just wanted to win the game. So we went in there, and I really loved it there. I loved Virginia. I loved the kids there. We won the first 3 games, and you thought I was the best coach ever. But it finally, by the end of the year, we were 4-5-1. The next year, we were 5-5. That was the first non-losing season they ever had. So you had to take your successes where you could. And the next year, I think we were 2-8 or 3-7. Then I came to back to Edneyville. And so that's how I got started. And Tom Pryor called me up and said, he's at one time he was the most winningest girls basketball coach in this state. And he called me and he said, would you come back to Edneyville? I said, me and Bill, which were our Bill Whitmire and him, were co-coaches, said we're getting out of it. They'd coached 10 years. They coached me, started with me in 64, and then 74 I came, so they coached 10 years.
All right.
They said they're getting out of it. And football ended up. And anyway, he was still with basketball. So I came back to my Edneyville and coached there for 9 years. And we had some success, but didn't have great success. Well, I think we finished first twice, second 4 or 5 times, and the rest of the years were not very good. And at the end of those years, the first 12 years, if you was told me, you'd say, Coach, you're going to be the most winningest coach in this state, I would have told you you're crazy, because I only had about 50 wins. And about 70 or 80, I was like 50 and 70 or something like that.
I've got you 48 and 54 just in Edneyville.
Yeah.
And not including those.
Yeah, okay, it's 40, okay.
48, 54, and that's not including your time at Chattanooga.
Yeah.
But what was it like to be able to go back to your hometown, the school you came up in, and lead the young boys and girls there? Because I think that's got to be a pretty neat feeling to go back home and coach.
Well, you ever heard of Thomas Wolfe?
I'm not sure.
Great writer, came out of Asheville.
Yes. Yeah.
He wrote a book, You Can't Go Home Again.
That's right.
And but you can. It was a little bit difficult at times, because I think that the people at Edneyville, I love the kids. The kids were great, and they're still the best at the sports award, the Hall of Fame award. I had some kids down there. They're the great kids, but a lot of the community people, I think, looked at me like I was as a player rather than a coach. And that's kind of tough sometimes. They look at you as what you were in high school.
Still that young came through.
Yeah. So that was different. But I really enjoyed those years. The kids were really great, and I think they really learned a lot. And I think they really. I had a great staff there, and we did win. Like I say, we won. We weren't 10-0 every year, but we did win 2 championships and came in second a lot. But and that was to Cherokee, and Cherokee was real good at that time. So it was a good experience. It really was.
So at the end of the 83-84 school year, you packed up the family, and you mentioned Highway 64. You guys load up and come back down 64 and head west here to Murphy, and you take over this Murphy Bulldog job where we're at right now. And in the midst, you won 9 championships. I mean, you did a lot of great things. How was that transition, and maybe what was it that led you to want to come and coach here?
Well, I had some. I go to a lot of coaches clinics, and I'd heard of Murphy. Been at Edneyville, you'd heard of Murphy and Andrews and Robbinsville out here in the west, but that's 120 miles from Edneyville and Hendersonville. So I knew the previous coach. I met the previous coach here, and he said they're going to get rid of him. But I talked to him at Murphy, and he said, Coach, he said that if you want a good community, football community, he said, now Murphy is a good football community. I didn't know anything about it until I talked to him. He said they were a good football community, so I said okay. So I called up here and talked to the principal and the vice principal, and they interviewed me. But the way I got the job, this is the way I think I got the job, was that the rivalries over here, this is really football. This football over here is a little bit different than Henderson County. It's a little bit tougher. It's a little bit more intense. It's a lot more intense. And so I played in the first round that year in it was 82. I came over here in 83. In 82, I played Hayesville. Hayesville had beaten, like I say, Murphy was 3-27 in the 3 years before I came. And Hayesville had beaten Murphy like 62-0 or 62-7 a couple of years before. And Hayesville had tied with the league with Robbinsville that year. And at that time, the 1As played each other twice and played the 2As once. It was the Smoky Mountain Conference, kind of like it is now. They had 1A, 2A. So all the 2As played each other twice, 1As once. 1As played each other twice, the 2As once. And so they split that year. And so Hayesville came to Murphy, and they put it on radio, one of the first radio games that they carried. And that goes back to the radio. I tell you, that's probably important to me.
Very important.
The assistant principal, which was became my principal after I came here, listened on the radio, and he was the assistant coach in the '74 state championship that Murphy won. And he listened to the game, and we kind of shut them down, and they were a pretty good team. So when we beat Hayesville, there's not much love lost between Murphy and Hayesville, whether it be sports-wise or community-wise. That 62-6 beating was another bitter pill that Murphy had to take. And I think he just wanted somebody he thought could beat Hayesville. So that's the reason why I think I got the job.
Wow.
I don't know where I got the job for that reason, but I think that's probably one of the reasons. And that turned out good for him and me.
You mentioned that the coach told you that he thought the town would support football. The football is important. You do pick your family. You guys move west. What was your first thoughts here of Murphy when you get moved in? You get settled in. What did you think about the community?
I really liked the community. I had a rather tough time, not football-wise, but I had cancer. I just found out I had cancer in the summer when I came over here, and I had radiation treatment. So when I came over here the first summer, I every day I had to travel back and forth to Asheville. It's not like it is now. So I get up at
like a whole day's adventure.
Yeah, it's a day's adventure. You know that.
Yeah.
Go to Asheville, be there at 11 o'clock, turn around, come back, lay in the bed, come back up here and go to workouts. So it kind of off to a rough start, but I really liked the community was ready. You're talking about a football community that went 3-27. They're ready for good football. Now we didn't turn it around all at once. But we did start turning it around. I like the kids here. They got a good work ethic. They're respectful. They understand discipline. And I think all kids do. All kids want discipline. They don't want to just get out there and run around.
Sure.
And so the first year we were like 4-5-1, something like that. I can't tell you exactly because I'm not looking at them. Next year I hired probably one of the best line coaches in the state, Bill Gaither, out of Georgia. Good football out of Newnan, Georgia. And he ran the wing tee, and he was a line coach in the wing tee, so that helped me out, because I'm a wing tee man. And so I think we went 5-5. And Coach Whitmire, he told me after, he said, "Coach, I'm good for a half a game a year." Because that tie was a half win, half loss. He said, "I'm good for a half a win a year." So I said, okay. But he was good for more than that.
Wow.
And so my staff kind of, after the second year, got players. Yep, I mean, I had good players when I first came here. The thing about the players that I had that were good, they didn't know how to win. And that's a big thing, Chris, is knowing how to win. It's not how good you are. It's knowing how to win. Wow. And they didn't know how to win because they hadn't won. They'd been beat down. And but we taught them how to win. We stayed here 4 years. The first 2 years, I think, is important here. Not the overall record was great, but we beat everybody on our schedule. And so what did that tell those kids?
That they could.
That they could.
That's right.
Okay? We didn't beat them every time, but we beat them on our schedule the first 2 years. We beat Baby Howell out of Smoky. We beat Bob Cobbin out of Robbinsville. You know what I mean? So we won. We beat everybody on our schedule at least one time. And so then when you get players in your program, then that really turned it around. And those players were not the average players. They were better than the average players.
What made them so good? The athleticism? Was it the toughness that you instilled in the weight room? Like, what is it you think that made these young men special and able to really help turn this program around?
Well, they were great athletes, great people, great parents. And I've told this before. I said, anytime, and I've been coaching 50 years as a head coach. I said, you show me a good kid, 90% of the time, I'll show you a good parent. And that's what we had. We had good parents. And so the parents were good. The kids, they had great ability, and they were coachable, very coachable. And our coaching staff did a great job. I had Bill Gaither, Wayne Watson was the core of my staff. Rick Hickey, Wayne Watson was offensive, defensive backs. He was defensive back and receivers. Gaither was offensive, defensive line, and they stayed with me. Those two people stayed with me for 18 years.
Sure. You mentioned the good kids. What was the and the good parents, and coming up? What was the town like? Were these kids of like parents that worked in factories? Or was agriculture big? Like, were these kids? I'm trying to understand their background. A lot of the kids here in town that you coached.
We didn't have much agriculture here. Most of them different things. They were in plants, and they're not in plants here anymore, hardly. But they were then. Okay. They had a lot of plants, and then other work was here.
Okay.
And we have a black community here, which is great, which is unlike a lot of other mountain towns, not like down east, down to central. And football coaches, they're colorblind.
Sure, of course.
Talent's talent.
Yes.
And we had a lot of it. And I can tell you, we start off with talent. You're looking at Carl Pickens.
Oh yeah, one of the best.
One of the best it's ever played.
Not just in Murphy, but in the state.
Yeah, in the state.
No record shows that.
Yeah. And so we did Carl, and in that group you had James Shope. He was he got a full ride to App. Mel Nicely got a full ride to App. Sean Johnson, he played in that 85 to 87, 88 era in there. He was 3-time starter at offensive at State. So we had a lot of real good people. Had Jeff Martin as quarterback, and we had really had a lot of good people.
Coach, tell me about some more of the outstanding players that you really want to highlight throughout the course of your career.
Well, we've already talked about Mel Nicely and Carl Pickens and James Shope and DJ Cox, but also I'd like to Ryan Stiles played defensive tackle here, offensive tackle. He started 3 years at UNCP. Micah Nelson, he was my quarterback in the 2018 state championship, and now he is a defensive end at Western, and a very good one. He's one of the top Division I AA. I call him Division I AA players. Now he was like 6'1", 6'2", 180 here. He's 6'1", 6'2", 260 now. Joey Curry was quarterback here, for doing our state, some of our state runs. I'd like to mention Joseph Watson and Eric Laney. They played here from 94 to 96, and Coach, you can always remember when you got these good players, they do good all the way through. So in 94 we were 14-1 and lost in the state game by 1. In 96 they were undefeated. So Joseph was a running back, and Eric Laney was a tight end, and he went on. They both played at Western, and Eric was a special team player of the week in the nation one time at Western. Had a guy here named Seth Curtis, which we mentioned about the Wallace Rose Hill. He was a quarterback, and that game when I thought had some real good players. The next year he took some not as quite a good a team and won the state championship. Tyree Allen here is he played here and went on to Mars Hill. Had a real good career at Mars Hill and played in the European League at Mars Hill. So those are some of the things, people that really are outstanding, have been some of the top, and I could go on and on and on. But those players were, and one other, Yusuf Mugrabil, which is now at State, and I think he'll have a shot at playing starting offensive line at State. He was in 2 of our state championship as offensive tackle, and probably one of the best offensive linemen we ever had.
How rewarding is it to see Coach Joseph Watson, now that he's the head coach here and took your job, having brought him up in your program, and now to see him spreading his wings and lead this program on his own?
Well, he has a pretty good family history. His daddy, Wayne Watson, spent the first 18 years with me as assistant coach. And then as soon as his daddy retired, he came out of Western, and I hired him as the last 18 or so. It was 19, 18, 20 years, some of those. So they kind of hooked up there together. And it's real rewarding. And also, I recommend him for the job. So it'd been tough. I recommended him a job, and he didn't do good. But I recommended him for the job, and he's done excellent. And he's kept that tradition alive. He's kept some of the same things that I've done here, but also gone on his own and done his own thing, which he should have. And but I'm very proud of Joseph. He's doing a heck of a job, not only in football but in other areas for the state.
Wow, wow. I want to sidestep one thing. We want to talk about some of those big teams. I know you start thinking about '87 and some of those incredible Murphy teams. But you mentioned Coach Babe Howe, and you mentioned Coach Colvin, Bob Colvin at Robbinsville. I'll bring up Boyce Dietz. Earlier, you was talking about the interview process, and Smoky Mountain football versus Henderson County football was just different, more physical, more intense. How was coaching against coaches like that different? Because those are Hall of Fame, I mean, some of the best in the state. What was it like going toe-to-toe with some of those men on Friday?
It was tough. It wasn't easy. I mean, but it wasn't supposed to be easy. Now, I got here in the later, I had more Dietz than I had Colvin and Howe. Colvin, I think, he retired about 85.
Okay.
Babe got into Smoky Mountain. He was different from Silver to Smoky. I played him at Silver, and then they consolidated and went to Smoky, and I think it was a little bit different. That was a little bit different, but my big rivalry was Boyce Dietz. Boyce was he's won probably 7 or 8 state championships and at Swain County and
in a very short amount of time.
Yeah.
He was on top of his game.
He was top. And we became a good rivalry. But it wasn't a good rivalry. It was the best rivalry, I think, in the mountains. Pisgah Tuscola. I don't think you've heard of that rivalry.
Of course.
And Murphy Swain, I think, are the top 2. Was in that era from the 80s to 90s area when Dietz and I were coaching against each other, and he was the only coach that I had even around a 500 record.
Wow!
I mean, we just went each other, and the fans got into it, and it started in 1985 when we beat them in. We beat them over there to win the conference. Late in the ball game, Carl caught a pass. He was really injured in that game, and we kind of decoyed him most of the game, but he was a good enough athlete, so you throw it out there to him, he could win. And we should have won the state. I know that I think one of the questions you wanted to ask is what was my good teams.
Sure.
What teams did you have that you thought was good enough to win the state? That was one of them, 85. 85 should have won. They should have won the state. They won the conference, beat Swain, and then lost to Rosman in the last second over here. And then Swain beat Rosman the next week and went on to win the state. So that was one of the teams that I thought should have won.
Sure.
2010 should have won. We played Wallace Rose Hill.
Yeah, I remember.
And up there, we really beat them, and really beat them. And that guy, he kicked a 43-yard field goal in the rain and against the wind and the rain to beat us. But those 2 teams were probably better than some of the other teams that won. When you win the state, sometimes it's who you play.
Sure.
And so those 2 teams were as good as almost as any other team, because the 85 team, all those sophomores on the team, they went and won in 86 and 87.
Sure. Thinking to your rivalry again with Swain and Boyce Dietz, he known for his split back veer, and they pretty much, from what I've gathered, really only ran about 2 plays, inside veer and outside veer. You just had to stop it. Even though you knew what they were going to do, how tough is it to try to stop something that you know is coming when it's run as well as he ran it?
Well, you had to talk to Bill Gaither on that because he's my defense coordinator. I was usually on the offensive side of the ball. I come in here and coach the meeting and say, okay, Bill, how you going to do that? Well, Bill was pretty good at it, but it was tough. It was tough because we're kind of built on the same thing, principle. He ran the inside veer and outside veer, and then he'd have quick pitch, something else. He had some other things plays with it, but not many. And we're the wing T team. We run trap and buck sweep. That's all we do. Basically, that's our base play: trap, buck sweep, cross. That's it. And so we try to out execute people, and sometimes I think it came down to who had the best kids.
Sure. Did you ever try to throw a waggle pass in there? Just
Oh yeah. We throw them all the time. That was part of our offense, but we just say. But it was hard. It was hard.
Especially when you had somebody like Keith Schuler running the show.
Yeah. No, Heath went out of that veer hole at some. They went to the gun on Heath, and they made us. You know, when you're coaching with us and Swain from 1985 to 96, and I told you this earlier, that we won 4 state championships. They won 4 state championships. We played for another one and lost. They played for another one and lost. Well, that's 10. And Robbinsville won the 11th one. So that's 12 state championships. Them all came out of the Smokies except one, and most of them came from Swain and Murphy. And Swain would play Murphy at the end of the year, the last game of the year for the conference championship in those years. And whoever who won that game had a head start or advantage to the state championship. Not all the time that they did it, but like 87, we went over there and they beat us in 87. I don't know whether you remember that game or not, but that was probably the most people were at that game did any game when I coached here.
Wow.
87, the first game, and about the same amount the second game. They beat us, lost us. We had a 24-game win streak, and they beat us like 28-21 or 28-24, something like that. And I was really, I thought that we couldn't get beat. I mean, we just went through 86. Nobody was close. Went through 87. People maybe got a little close, but they didn't by the end of the game. And I felt like it. Of course, we had the best team in the state by far. But yeah, on that night, a great coach at a great away atmosphere at Swain County. It was hard. It was tough.
Sure.
We fumbled the ball twice inside of 30. They blocked a punt. They played real well, and I was real disappointed because I didn't think that was one game that I didn't do the job that I should have done as a football coach. I thought, and Chris, I think this is, I keep learning in my career. I learned that your kids pick up on what you think. You don't have to tell them. You do not have to tell them one thing. You say, I think this about this game. When you coach them all week long, they're going to know what you think about that game. You don't have to tell them.
Sure. And
I remember a sign early in my coaching career there at Edneyville, West Henderson, said, I was in the visiting coach's office that before we go out to, was in there just coaching and having a talk, and I looked up and there's a sign outside on top of the door going out. So the coach is going out and said, your team reflects you. Mm-hmm. And that always made an impression on me.
Absolutely.
And at that time, I thought that game that I thought during that week with that great team I had, that all I had to do was go over there and play good and win. I don't care how they played. They could play great. If we played good, they couldn't beat us, and they couldn't. But what does that do to your players? Then you don't have the what? The edge.
The edge.
If you don't have the edge, then you're not going to beat a good team that's playing well. Mm-hmm. And so they played extremely well. I mean, extremely well.
That brings me to, I was thinking, you know, you mentioned in 83 you took the job, or 84 you took the job here in Murphy, and you talked about at that time, the dislike between Hayesville. You know, they had beaten you, and there was a little bit of a dislike between the two programs. Was there a dislike between you and Swain as you guys developed this intense rivalry? And talk about, you know, the head-to-head going against someone, you know, Coach Boyce Dietz, who was at the top of his game, and both of you guys were looking for that edge. What was there ever any, you know, I don't want to use the word tomfoolery, but what kind of game?
Oh yeah, there was a lot of games. There was a lot of gamesmanship in that because, you know, I don't think you can be a great coach unless you have some gamemanship.
And is that part of finding that edge in helping your players in
anything that you can do? Anything that you can do. And the famous, I can tell you two famous stories here. Coaches like to get edges, would it be like to come out of the locker room last or go a certain way. Instead of coming out of the Swain locker room and going where Swain was going to come out of, I wanted to walk all the way around the gate and I'll go walk in front of my stand so my kids can get feel their stand and their support and come in the gate on the other end of the field. And we had scouted it out and pre-game, and my assistant came up and said, Coach, we can do that. That gate's open, and said, we'll do that. It's pre-game. So we walked all the way down there, and our fans were crazy and going crazy. We walked in front of them, and we go up down there, and the damn gate was locked. And so
he
kind of snookered me on that thing. Well, kind of remembered that, and so, but when he came here, when we got a hill here, as you notice, you've been here, and you got to go down this hill, and you got to go down the steps, and they got his last game here, we'd beat him in '96 here, very close game, and then he can't come back and play us in the playoff, very close game. I mean, all of our games were really, most of them were close, tight games, and they won most of the games at Swain. We won most of the games over here in that 12-year period. And so he didn't want to go down through my people that was they come up and they'd stand at the top of the steps, and we'd line them up. They'd line them up down to our tunnel would go all the way from the top of the steps to the bottom of the steps to the playing field. And so he didn't go. He wouldn't walk down there. He walked all the way around the road and came in the side gate. And so it was kind of like gamemanship. I was going to make him walk through our people to go to the field, to have him feel what it was to play like it here at Murphy.
And I heard you were willing to get a 15-yard penalty to start the game just to make sure you.
I would do that. I would do that in a heartbeat.
Man, that's incredible. These are great stories, Coach. We've mentioned Carl Pickens and some of the other guys. Who were some of the athletes that not only stood out to you, with their, play on the field, but just some of the guys that you just thought were just incredible for this program, some players that really stand out to you?
Well, I told you, I mentioned Carl and Mel and James and those people. Other people, I think, if everybody come there and ask you, Coach, as long as we have here and had as much success as we've had, who's my best running back? Was a kid named Jake Smith. I think he was my best running. And I had some good ones. I had some good running backs, good high school running back, and I had to have to win many ball games that I did. And he was kind of a skinny person. His older brother was playing for me, and he played in 86, 87 teams. And he was really good. He played 86, 87, 88, and he was really good running back. And I was out practicing Thursday practice, and they'd walk down the fence there and going to the store. JV team was before they play, and they'd holler up there at Jake, and Benny Smith was his name. He said, Coach. He said, what? I said, that goes. He's going to be the best running back that you've had. And I said, what are you talking about? I said, who is that? He said, that's Jake. That's my brother. He said, he's going to be your best running back. And Benny was real good. He didn't win nothing but 2 state championships, And, of course, he had a lot of people. He had Carl and the rest of them. DJ Cox was here. DJ Cox was, 6'2", 220, fullback, could run, linebacker. We had people. I mean, I don't know how good a coach I am, but I know how good people we had.
Yeah.
And so Jake, I said, a little skinny person. Yeah, he was us. And Jake ran in 91, we won state. He was running back. And then we had, that was the years we had realignment. I don't know if you remember that, from 88 to
89.
'89 to '92.
90, yeah, the 89 football season, was the first of the new realignment.
Yeah. And so we were under restriction because we were over a little bit in every other year. So we won it in '91. Jake was a junior, and he had a lot of people with him, just like the others. But he had a lot of good people. The next year, we couldn't go, but we were 10-0, and we beat the state champion Robbinsville like 42-6 here. So to help our rivalry out with Robbinsville, I had a T-shirt made that said "the real state champions," and that didn't work. They've always remembered that somehow down through the years. But that's the way these rivalries up here are. Babe Howell used to say if something would happen that was kind of controversial, he said, that just helps a rivalry, And so that's what happens in the mountains. You get rivalry, and you get things that happen, and people think about them, and you kind of play them up, and kind of play the edge-wise. So I think in the first years was the great rivalry with Swain. The last 8 years, maybe probably Robbinsville. But we had a pretty good rivalry with Robbinsville later in my career.
I went to one of your games. You played Robbinsville up there in Robbinsville at Big Oak Stadium. That's an interesting environment. What was some of the great environments that you felt like you took your team to play on the road that was just always a tough place to win? We've mentioned Swain, but tell me about that tight confine in Robbinsville.
Swain was tough. They were all tough. I mean, even when Dietz wasn't there, Swain was still tough for me. Us and Murphy in 2000, Swain. I remember one year, it was 2011 or 2013. Swain won the 2A and we won the 1A. But they were always tough until the later, Robbinsville, and everybody always thought the Big Oaks was I didn't think it was hard to play over there. I tried to tell my team I didn't think, because we had a lot of success over there. If we hadn't had a lot of success throughout the years, if you look at mine and Robbinsville's record against Robbinsville, I was here for 38 years, is probably 36-7.
Right.
That's a lot of wins over there.
It is.
You know what I mean? And they didn't win one over here until from '85 until like '98. Oh no, 2007.
Wow.
I mean, they didn't win over here. So the Robbinsville thing, the Big Oak Stadium was, well, I think a lot of people did, but I never did feel bad about going over. It's cramped, but we just kind of took that as a challenge more than because we were pretty successful at. The tough place was Swain. That was a tough place to play.
What were some of the most memorable away games you played in playoff runs? Maybe some other schools in other parts of the state you thought were tough environments? North
Stanley was pretty tough. Well, they had a good team down there. They were a pretty tough environment. I don't remember anything else because.
What about Albemarle? You had some big games.
Yeah. Back in the day, that was Albemarle. I went down. I'll tell you the key to Albemarle game. And they were good. They kind of dominated the end of the 2000, 8, 9, 10. What was 7, 8, 9, somewhere in that area.
They had two different runs. They had the early 2000s with T.A. McClendon.
And
the
second half.
Yeah.
We didn't play them when they had T.A. That would probably not been a good choice. Because I played some of those big people. But we went down there in 2009. I remember. I think it was 2009 we went down there, and they were top. They were higher seed than we were, so that's the reason why we were down there. And we had heard all of Albemarle, how tough it was, how good they were. As a tough place to play, and everybody just dreaded going down there. And coming from the mountains, I don't think I don't think our kids were intimidated because they'd been in places, and that's a good thing. And so I didn't know what to expect. We went down there and started playing the game, and they got up on us, and then sometimes you just want to get a first down, you know. It's like going to East Montgomery. We went down there. They were really good. They were like 10-1 or 9-1. We went down there and played them. East Montgomery, and they had the motorcycles out. You ever been in there when they had the motorcycles out and stuff like that? And here we are. We were probably second place team down there, and we go in and they score. They score in the first get the ball. We get the ball back. We fumble it, and they score again. And without about a minute and 50-some seconds, we were down 13-0.
Wow.
You know, and you wondered, well, wow, this team, we're going to get blown out. But we finally made a first down. Mm-hmm. We hadn't made. Then you can make another first down, and after a while, you got confidence that okay, we can move the ball, we can get in the end zone, and we wound up winning the game.
Wow.
But in the Albemarle game, you talking about that was we started moving football, scoring. They were ahead of us. We started moving football, scoring, and by the end of the game, we had onside kick. If we got the ball and scored, we'd win. We got beat like, I don't know, 33-30 or something like that, or 35-30 something. It was a good game. And so the coaches, players, everybody that walked off that field, what do you think it felt? They felt like, okay, we can play with this player.
That's right.
We can play with him.
That's right.
Didn't have to beat him, but you found out, hey, you can play with him. So from then on, they didn't beat us. But it was we had some great wins down there. We had one in 2 or 3 overtimes, and it was great. And of course, the last one was not up here, and we beat them bad up here the last time in the rain, mud. It's the worst mud game. Well, the second worst mud game I ever had.
Wow.
But anyway, Albemarle was a good place to play.
Wow. I mentioned you won 9 championships here, but you also, you was a great coach. I'm assuming you were the athletic director here.
I was the athletic director here out of 38 years. I was here for like 35, 34 years. First 34 years, yeah.
So I thought you were. So you had been a head coach. You had been running the school's athletic programs, oversaw a lot of that. And then later in your career, you transitioned and you became part of the NCHSAA Board of Directors. That was an experience in itself, because then it required a lot of travel to Chapel Hill, a lot of meetings, a lot of calls with, other school leaders around the state. How was that experience for you, and maybe what insight could you share about being part of the NCHSAA Board?
Well, on hindsight, it's great. If I knew after you go through those 4 years, if you could go back and serve another 4 years, I think you'd do a lot better job.
Sure.
You know what I mean? When you get thrown into something that you don't know nothing about, I felt like that I could have done a better job of representing some problems in the high school that I didn't do a good enough job of doing. One was the charter school issue. I didn't think I did enough job for that. I think realignment should be every 2 years. I hate it when you, and we're about the only state that does it. Everybody else does it 2 years. I don't know where everybody else does it, but I know Georgia does it, Tennessee does it. And I don't know about Virginia. I did coach in Virginia, but I don't know how the realignment. I think that's a more equitable situation when you do it every 2 years. You don't get out of line.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Because on a 4-year cycle, they're going to take your number on your third out of a 4. Well, you're not into that to 2 years. You right?
That's right.
It takes you 2 years to get into your realignment.
That's right.
Then you're in it for 4 years. Well, that's 6 years since you've been on alignment. I thought that was, and some other things, that I was there at a really important part of the thing. That's when Dave Whitfield resigned. He went up, and we were on the board there, and we made her interim, and then we gave her the commissioner. So a lot of important things happened during that thing, but I think I could done a better job with the schools as far as helping the schools out. And sometimes you get thrown in at a big board. You're one out of 24 or 18 or something like that, and maybe I didn't say enough. Maybe I should have said more. I said enough. If you ask Q, I probably said enough. But Q and I are real good friends. But I think that was a good learning experience for me.
Sure.
You know, and it really got me to know the ins and out of high school, North Carolina High School Athletic Association.
Sure. Not trying to put you on the spot, and you don't have to answer, but what's your thoughts on the state legislature trying to get involved with the high school association and, you know, a lot of the changes that we've seen these last couple of years?
Don't like it. Don't think it needs to happen. I think, on the other hand, there's two sides of this, and I don't know what you think about this. I'm just telling you, I think that maybe the NCHSAA has led to some problems. Some of the decisions has led to those people saying, okay, if you can't do this or if you won't do this, then I'll do this.
Sure.
You see what I mean? And so I think that's a two-way street. But I don't think I don't want anything to do with the state legislature handling high school athletics. I just think if, high school athletics needs to do the right things and do the things that it needs to keep in-house. We don't need legislators telling us, okay, what about this situation? What about this fight? What do we need to do here? We need to keep them out of a game, 2 games, or we need to go. That doesn't need to happen. They know they have all the things that they can do to make the decisions. Those people down there have no idea of what. I don't think many of them have any idea of what is going on in the High School Athletic Association. So sometimes I think we might maybe do a better job.
Yeah.
We won't get that, okay? But and I think that's and it becomes political. Anytime that you become political, then you're way out of line.
I agree. Kind of like the mayor or the city council here in Murphy telling you how to run your football program.
That's exactly right. We don't want that. That's not going to happen. It wouldn't happen when I was here. It's not a good situation. So, no, and I'm not afraid to say that. And I think it needs to be said. And I don't know how much they've interfered since then. I just think that they got to say we can't interfere. And I don't like that either.
Pandora's box, and now it's open.
It's open.
That's right.
So what are we going to do with it?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Moving on here, you were the head coach of the Shrine Bowl essentially twice. You essentially picked 2 teams. And, my involvement with the Shrine Bowl for many years and right in the middle of it, I have to say, having been a part of a lot of Shrine Bowl staffs and helping with the coverage and stuff, you were probably the best head coach I've ever seen as a North Carolina Shrine Bowl coach. And your attention to detail, the effort you put into picking a team, that was tremendous. But tell me about your experience with the Shrine Bowl. Again, essentially 2 times because of Hurricane Matthew and the way it pushed the season back. Yeah,
I always said I was two times, probably the only 2-time head Shrine Bowl coach. I don't know. I think I treated the Shrine Bowl coach as the real head coach. I tried to get out of when I was in high school. As long as I was in high school, I was served mostly as the offensive coordinator. Joseph Watson helped me out. Cesar Campana helped me out. But when the final decision was what play to run, I'm gonna call it.
That's right.
Okay. But they helped me design it, plays and stuff like that. But when I got to the Shrine Bowl, I tried to do it like a college. I was just going to be the head coach and I just coached the position, which was running backs. I had 3 great running backs. I didn't have too much. And so I gave everybody, when I got my staff together, I don't know what, I said, this is what you're in charge of, This is offensive line, and it said, I said, I want you to have a lot of input on your picks. The final input was me, because who's the head coach?
That's right.
And I think you found that out. And but that's just the way I ran things. That's the way I ran things here. When the final, we put stuff on the board, but when it came down, well, you can do it this way, you can do it this way. Which way are you going to do it? You're going to do it my way. And Jimmy Owens, Jimmy.
Jimmy's a good man.
He is a great man, and he really helped me out as far as all the combines we did, But my coaching staff, both staffs, just fell in the line. They checked their egos at the door. They came in and said, I told them what they were doing, said, all right, coach, you the head coach. And I had some great coaches. At the end of the first year, we had Kevin Gillespie was at Page. Tim Carson was at Weddington, and I was at Murphy. And we were all on the quarterback. I was all on the Shrine Bowl staff, and that was 2016. And we done all of our picks, had all of our meetings, had all the combines, had all the meetings, and people get hurt, and you'd have to redo it. You know how all that is. And you'd be picking kids. You never finish picking kids until Monday of your Shrine Bowl week. Right?
That's right.
You can pick them to Monday of Shrine Bowl week. And that's what you did. Because people get hurt, people wouldn't show up. And so we'd gone through that whole process. We got the week before the Shrine Bowl. And those 3 teams, those 3 coaches were, us 3, were all playing games in the regional finals. Gillespie was offense coordinator. Kevin was defense coordinator, and I was the head coach. All 3 won. So that on Friday night, the Shrine Bowl lost their head coach, the offense coordinator, defense coordinator, and some players. And so in order to play the next week. So that was a blow to them. But I went ahead and I got to pick the head coach that was on my staff. They said, okay, you can pick everybody and then they picked the coaches that replaced
coach from Grace Creek, I believe.
Yeah.
David, I'm blanking on his name. Yeah, he did a great job in your absence.
Yeah, he did. And I'm blanking on his name too. But he did a great job. He was the one I thought could do the job in there. But yeah, I don't know if I'm that good or not. But that's what Jimmy had always said, Coach, I've never seen anybody come in the Shrine Bowl and control a coach's meeting. Huh?
Love it.
Yeah.
I believe.
Yeah, love it. Yeah.
Tremendous job. I did the TV that week. And
did you?
As organized as you. So
he did a tremendous job.
I wasn't going to ask this question, but you talk about coaches checking their egos at the door. What would your advice be to young coaches who are trying to find their way in coaching, trying to get in, trying to maybe make a name for themselves in coaching? What's some advice you would give to a younger coach coming into this business today?
Number one is you can learn as much as you can and work as hard as you can. The thing about that I had some of the coaches, not anybody on my staff, because I wouldn't have them. But if I did have them, then I have got rid of some coaches, and I'm not bragging, but the thing about it is, if you're going to be on a staff, I want you committed to football. And I don't want you to be a participant. You know the difference in breakfast. You've heard that story, hadn't you? About the chicken.
Is a part of it. The pig's committed.
Yeah, the chicken is a participant.
Yeah.
The pig is committed. You want that kid that's committed to it. And so he's got to be committed to learning everything as much as he can. And I want to be. I want to take him to as many clinics as I can take to. He needs to look at as many films. He needs to study. He needs, like I say, and you said he needs to be committed. If he's not going to be successful. They're just not. And a lot of coaches that not on my staff, but I have seen on other staffs, they're not committed. They don't want to learn. They don't go to clinics. They don't read books. Wing T book, Delaware Wing T. You got to read from cover to cover, and then next year you got to read it again. What did I miss? And then you got to go to every. Where have we been since we've been here? We've been to National Wing T Clinic in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Great clinic, by the way.
Yeah, I've been to Southeastern Wing T Clinic, which is a great clinic. We went to the clinics in Atlanta, the Glazier clinics, and went to all. They got a session on the Wing T, and we'd go to those clinics every year. And you listen to the great minds, and you'd say, if you went to a clinic every year and got one thing, it was worth it. If you got one thing that you could use for your program, it was worth it. If you got two or three, then you're really up on the game. If you got a little wiggle here, little wiggle there, that was good. I remember I thought I knew how to run the trap, and I went to a Wing T clinic and I got down and he said, "Okay, I'm going to teach you how to run this trap." And I learned how to run the trap.
Wow.
And I could run the trap, but I wasn't running exactly where you get the most out of it. And the blocking techniques and stuff like that. Success does not come easy.
That's right.
It does not come easy. And I think the kids, if you get the coaches buy-in, the kids are going to buy in. The kids, like I said, kids are, and people ask me today, and you might ask me this question, Coach, you went from 1970, when I got out of school, 71, was my assistant coach, went from 71 to 2001. That's 50 years. Over that 50 years, what has changed? How's the kids have changed? Everybody says they changed. Kids haven't changed.
Their surroundings change.
Their surroundings change. Kids haven't changed. They still want discipline. They still want guidance. They still like being on time. And all you got to do is put it out there and say, "This is what we're going to do. This is the way we're going to do it." And of course, the kids don't want to do it. They don't do it. But most of the kids that I found in this area, especially, more was the last year or the first year, would do what your coaching philosophy might have changed as far as what has changed is how much you hit. Okay, and that has changed a whole lot. Used to, you go bull in the ring and man on man. We had very little of that. We never were a bull in the ring, and I always talk how tough you are. You got to be tough, but it's kind of like I learned a lot early, and try to do it. And when we're running drills in early summer workouts, you want to find out who can get down there and get it and who can do this. But a lot of coaches say, okay, they do it the first day, they do it the second day, do it the third day, they're still in the season to do it. No. If I find out a kid that can do it, I check him. I check him off. This kid can do it. I don't need to test him out every day. You know when he needs to be tested?
Those guys that can't.
Yeah. You know when he's going to be tested? After you've tested him out on Friday night.
Right.
It's like one kid told me, and he said, I have great kids, great stories. I had a great, real good running back, wing back here and defensive back. And he kind of, in that 10-0 season, so we kind of had to keep their focus. And I said, okay, the only thing that we can do this year, we can't win a state championship because we're on restriction. All we can go is 10-0, right? So that was our goal, 10-0. Wasn't a state championship, it was 10-0. And so we started out winning games. We won, and so we get towards the end of the year, and that's who's towards the end of the year. Usually Robbinsville and Swain, your two better teams are going to the end of the year. And so I tell him he had a little bit girl problem like they do, and sometimes he missed a Monday practice, and not that he skipped it, he just didn't want to work out or didn't want to practice, had an injury or something. The next Monday, and then he said he had a bad situation, I think. Well, I found out later with the girl, and so he felt bad he couldn't practice. And I don't like that a bit. And so I told him, I said, listen, Damon, I said, we got to go 10-0. I said, we have to put 100%. All the time, I said, we got to go 10-0. The only way we can go 10-0 is you give us 100%. I said, he said, okay, Coach. I said, okay. He said, when do you want 100%? I said, how about Friday night? So I said, Friday night. But that's kind of a little tongue-in-cheek thing. But he knew when he was going to have to get it. I knew he could do it. But you gotta get into kids, and I think if you let kids know that you care about them,
they'll do anything.
They'll do anything for you. You go pick them up. You call them when they're not at school. Every day, come across my desk. You know what came across my desk at 9:30 and 9 o'clock every day? Absentee sheet. I want to know where my kids are. I want to know what they're doing. And that, then they know you care about them.
That's right.
And so, it's a lot of things that you got to do. And I don't know, sometimes I think that I did a lot of them just because of the way I was raised.
Sure. Well, you won a lot of games. You won a lot of championships. You're in a lot of championship or Hall of Fames. Winning as coach in the state. I mean, we could go on and on and on. I kind of hit on those highlights to begin our little interview here. But what maybe is the thing you're the most proud of looking back on your 50-year plus career?
I don't know. I don't know if I could pick one thing. I just think the dealings with the kids every day. You look forward to practice. I think you don't go into this coaching. I didn't go into the coaching saying, okay, I'm going to change these people's lives. I never did that. I'm going to help this kid out. What did you do? You went in and said, okay, these are my rules. These are our rules, rather, and we're going to do this, and we're going to work hard. And I think when they call you back, say, Coach, I appreciate what you did. You didn't mean to. I mean, you didn't go out and say, I'm really going to help this kid out. You just did what you did every day.
Show up every day.
Show up every day. See where he is every day. That's probably what I'm proud of. And I tell you, I had the most highest compliment that I think that I've gotten down at the Hall of Fame weekend was not, Coach, you're a great coach, or Coach, how many wins you have, how many conference championships you have, how many state runners-up or state championships you had, how many people you had to go to college. But it wasn't that. And I had a Bobby Purcell, I think's his name. He used to be coach at state, now he's administrator at state. And he came out on Saturday morning, and he had watched the interview with me during the Hall of Fame banquet inductee. He said, Coach, you really did a good job last night. He said, I thank you a whole lot. He said, I'll tell you one thing. I'd want my boys to play for you.
That's incredible.
And that's it.
That's it. That's big. I guess one last thing I'll ask you. A lot of people in the community knows you. Some of the visiting fans here in Murphy, just people around the state. How do you want them to think of David Gentry in these years since you've been coaching?
I don't know. I don't know where. I just want to thinking that I did a good job. I want to. Well, I did a good job, and like I say, like one of my kids. At the end of the day, what do you want to do? You want to get better, and you want to do your best. And I want to say, those people look at me and say, I think he did his best. And your best is always good enough. I don't care whether you win, lose, or draw.
Coach, this has been amazing. Is there anything that we did not cover that you'd like to talk about?
I don't know of anything.
This has been a good.
Yeah, I mean, you had your questions. I just thought they were just great, right on the stuff that I've been thinking about for a long time since I retired. I didn't think much of this stuff before you retired, because why? You just want to win the next game. But after you retire, you look back and say, well, let me look over my life, see the things that happened to me and how they happened and why they happened. You're too busy in your life doing it. Now I get to sit back and look at why they happened,
right,
the people you met, and the people that really meant a lot to you, your coaches and your players and your supporters. And gosh, it's been a great run. I don't know of anybody else that I'd take the place of other than me.
Well, Coach, you've been great to me. I've learned a lot from you. I've always found you to be the most professional there is, and I appreciate your being willing to sit down and do this interview with me. Thank you.
I appreciate it. I've been looking forward to this since you called me up. After all those other people interview, I think I'm going to check you off as my top interviewer.
All right.